Hello, everyone, and welcome to the another session into our series of the AWS. Today, we're going to talk about, or we're going to build some of the things that we learned earlier, especially on the EC2 side, some of the elastic load balancing concepts, and we'll be using them into our today's session, which is Amazon's auto scaling. So, Amazon's auto scaling helps you maintain your application availability and allows you to scale your Amazon EC2 capacity up or down automatically according to conditions you define. So if you recall from our last session, I introduced you a new terminology or new term, elastic computing. So that's nothing but the auto scaling. You can use auto scaling to help ensure that you are running your desired number of EC2 instances. So let's say you're running a web application that anytime needs a minimum two instance. You can make sure with the help of auto scaling that any given point of time you always have that many number of instances. And again, you can scale up and down. Auto scaling can automatically increase the number of EC2 instances during demand spikes to maintain performance and decrease capacity during runs to reduce cost. So if you have defined, you got a pattern over a period of time that okay, every weekend we have more number of users accessing this website or application, you can add more instance at time. And the once demand is once the peak hours are gone, maybe you can reduce that capacity. Auto scaling is well suited both to applications that have stable demand patterns or that experience hourly or daily or weekly variable usage. So you can configure auto scaling based on time or based on load, or you will have X number of instances every time. I'll walk you through some of these options when we do some hands-on lab. There are a few things that you need to remember when we do this lab, or these are some of the important terminology when you're working with the auto scaling. When you launch a server manually, remember in the last lab we configured some EC2 instances. So when we launch an EC2 instance, we simply go ahead and select the type of the AMI image that we want, the instance size, whether it's a T2 micro versus NV large or some other optimized for graphics, computer storage, security group, and some other side. So all of those things that we were configuring manually, auto scaling called this the launch configuration. So it is just simply a set of parameters describing what kind of instance to launch. If it's a web server, okay, I want to launch a T2 micro. If I'm launching a database server, maybe I need much more capacity in terms of RAM, CPU, storage. So all of these parameters that you configure are known as basically the launch configuration in the terminology of auto scaling. There is another important term that you need to remember, something called auto scaling groups. This basically tells the system what to do with an instance after it is launched. So once you launch an instance, some of these things are defined here, like which availability zone your instance should be launched in. You can launch in same availability zone or in different availability zone. Which elastic load balancer they will receive traffic from, and most importantly, the minimum and maximum number of instances to run at any given time. So as we mentioned earlier, if you want to make sure that you always have two instances running any, no matter if it's a high usage, low usage, these are the constant number of instances. So that's something you know as your auto scaling groups. The most important phase with the auto scaling are called known as their scaling policies. So you need to define a set of rules that tell the system when to add or remove instances. So these set of rules are known as your scaling policies. So you can add these instances or remove these instances based on time, based on load, like as we discussed earlier. The good thing about the scaling policies, you can manually trigger these policies. If you're testing or doing something, make sure everything good. Or you can integrate that with your CloudWatch alarms. So your CloudWatch, you can use the matrices from the CloudWatch, and you can say, hey, okay, if the CPU usage on my server goes above 80%, add maybe two more instances. When the average CPU usage goes down, let's say 50%, remove one instance. Or if the experiencing a certain latency, add some more instance. So you get the idea. You can use the CloudWatch alarms to scale up and down or integrate with the auto scaling to really make use of the auto scaling without manually triggering the scaling policy. So just keep in mind these three important terminology. First is your launch configuration, another is your auto scaling group, and third are scaling policies. You will get to see them during our lab. So let me go ahead and share my logged onto the Amazon Management Console here. And if you look at the Management Console, there is no such option you will find that says auto scaling anywhere on the one of their thing. So if you recall, when we discuss auto scaling, we basically increase the number of instances. So we are talking about the EC2 things here. So now let's go back and click on the EC2. Under EC2, give it a few seconds. I went ahead and configured something. I already have one instance running. Like you can get to see that I have one instance. Under EC2, if you see, there is something called auto scaling. So let's go ahead and click on the auto scaling. So you will see there are two options. There is a launch configuration, there is auto scaling groups. If you recall from our presentation, there was a third item also, scaling policies. So where's that scaling policy? Okay, I'll walk you through how do we create those scaling policies later on. So the first important thing, going back to the presentation quickly, the first thing that we need to define these parameters. So we need to create a launch configuration, basically, which is a set of parameters, that in these parameters we need to tell you the type of EMI, security groups, and some of the other things. So let's go ahead and click on your launch configuration. So let me just zoom in a little bit. So it says, welcome to auto scaling. You can use auto scaling to manage Amazon EC2 capacity automatically, which is your elastic compute, basically. Maintain the right number of instances for your application. Operate a healthy group of instances and scale it according to your need. So let's go ahead and to create your auto scaling group in a different region, select a region from the navigation bar. So right now I'm in the North Virginia. If you need to change, you can go ahead and change it. I'm not going to make a change here. So let's go ahead and simply click on create auto scaling group. So create auto scaling group. To create an auto scaling group, you will first need to choose a template that you will use your auto scaling group will use when it launches instance for you, called the launch configuration. So let's go ahead and create a launch configuration. First, define a template that your auto scaling group will use to launch instances. So now let's go ahead and click on create launch instance. During it says, now create a launch instance. If you recall, it was a similar menu when we were creating the EC2 instance. But that time we were creating the EC2 instance. Now we are creating a launch configuration here. So now let's go ahead and select the Linux AMI in this case. I'll go ahead and select that one. For our purpose, we are good with the T2 micro. So 1 virtual CPU with 1 gig of memory with the EBS storage. Configuration detail. Now this is your launch configuration name. So give a launch configuration name. So I'm going to call them web auto. I'm not creating any IAM roles, so leave that. Monitoring, yeah, I want to integrate this with the CloudWatch detailed monitoring. Click on the advanced detail if you want to run a specific kernel ID, RAM ID, user data. So as usual, I'm going to make sure that I'm running a Apache server. So let's go ahead and install that one. Now look in the under IP address type. Only assign a public IP address to instance launch in the default VPC. Assign a public IP address to every instance. In our case, we'll assign a public IP address to every instance. Again, we can integrate with the load balancer. I'll show you that one later. So let's go ahead and simply add a storage. So same thing, 8 gig drive, SSD. We can encrypt if you recall from our last session. This is a root volume, delete on termination, check here. Let's go ahead and click on create security group. Look for are there any existing security groups. I do have existing security group that allows port 80 and 20, so I'll make use of that one. And if you look, there is another security group ALB created security group usement. No security group is specified, so this is just only port ID. I'll make use of both port AD and SSH here. So I'll use my existing security group. You can create a new one if you like. Just simply click review. This is some of the information for us to review. Once everything is done, just simply go ahead and click on launch configuration. Again, your SSH key. In my case, I'm using my existing key. I've saved that one already, so just simply go ahead and click on create launch configuration. So once the launch configuration is done, see, it automatically says, okay, create an auto scaling group. And if you recall, what was the auto scaling group? So the auto scaling group tells the system what to do when an instance after it is launched, like availability zone, if they need to have any elastic load balancer, minimum maximum number of instances. So let's go back here. Now I'll give it a group name. This is the launch configuration web auto scale. I'm going to call it my web auto scale propensity. Group size. So if you see this, it says the number of instances the group should have at any given time, also called desired capacity. So what is the desired capacity that I want to have any given point of time? So I'll go ahead and start with, let's say we're not running some heavy duty stuff. So probably I'll keep this as, okay, we'll keep this as an, one instance for to start off. And again, if we had any custom VPC, you can use your existing VPC. Same thing with the subnet. Under advanced detail, load balancing. So now we can create a load balancer. So what we can do here, we'll say receive traffic from Elastic Load Balancer. So once you do that, it expects you to have an Elastic Load Balancer. I didn't show you that I went ahead and created an Elastic Load Balancer already here. Let me just quickly show that to you guys one more time. So if I go into EC2, and if you go under your EC2, click on Load Balancer. So if you see, there is already a load balancer for port 80, and this is availability zones. And right now, if you see, there are no instances present. Health check, monitoring, security, some of the security stuff. It's allowed the access to the port 80, and that's how we'll go ahead and use the load balancer to front-end the traffic. So we can go ahead and simply select our load balancer here, health check type. We can say EC2 instance, or I'm going to say the ELB here, health check grace period. In my case, I'm just going to reduce 30 seconds. We'll go ahead and enable the CloudWatch detailed monitoring. Instead of manually launching, we'll make use of our CloudWatch matrices. Instance protection, if you recall that one, if protect from scale is set, newly launched instance will be protected from scale. I'm not making any change over here. You just simply go ahead and click create. Now, if you see the tab is configure scaling policies. So if we go back to our page, the scaling policies are rules that tell the system when to add or remove instances. So now we'll go ahead and configure our scaling policy. So just simply go ahead and click on scaling policy. So let's keep it our default, which is I'm gonna use here default in US East. Okay, I'll keep 1D for the time being. So now let's go ahead and configure a scaling policy here. So now our scaling policy says you can optionally add scaling policies if you want to adjust the size, number of instances of your group automatically. Guys, pay attention to the keyword automatic. A scaling policy is a set of instructions for making such adjustment in response to Amazon CloudWatch alarm that you assign to it. In each policy, you can choose to add or remove specific number of instances or percentage of existing group size, or you can set the group to be an exact size. When the alarm triggers, it will execute the policy and adjust the size of your group accordingly. So we'll use a scaling policy to increase up and down. So scale is between 1 and, let's say, maximum 5 server. We think, we're not going to go beyond that one. So we'll say, give it a name here. I'll call it Linux up. So now execute. If you see what it says, choose an Amazon CloudWatch alarm to associate with this policy. The alarm will automatically execute the policy when its threshold is reached. So we'll go ahead and add an alarm here. I'll show you that one. Send notification. We can configure notification. That means, let's say, when you create when an instance gets created or when an instance gets terminated or stopped, if you want to receive a notification, we can make use of the topic alarm. I'll show you that one later. So for the time being, I'm going to go ahead and deselect this one. So there are different options, minimum, maximum, average of CPU utilization, disk read, and you see there are different options. So we'll say the average of CPU utilization is, let's say, greater than equals to maybe 20% for at least one consecutive period of 5 minutes. So if any 5 minutes, if the CPU average CPU utilization is greater than 20%, that is the name of the alarm. That's our first alarm that we create. So this is just some condition. Now what to do based on that condition? So I create an alarm. So when this alarm, so we'll just simply go ahead and add maybe, let's say, 2 instances. Okay. You can add even multiple more. So when it's between, let's say, if it's 20%, if it's above 20%, we are adding 2 instances. But let's say if it's below, maybe, between 20 to 39, as long as the traffic is between 20 to 39%, we are okay with the 2 instances. But we can add, let's say, maybe one more instance when the capacity, when the CPU average CPU utilization is about 39%. So you can add multiple conditions here. Instance seconds to warm up before each step. So how long you want to wait. So in our case, maybe let's wait for 30 seconds. So this is, we are scaling up based on the load. So similarly, we can decrease when we don't have that load. So let's call it Linux down maybe, and we'll go ahead and create an alarm. So same thing, when the average CPU utilization is less than equal to, let's say, maybe 19% for at least 1 or 5 minutes, maybe we'll go ahead and just simply remove, let's say, 2 instances here. And again, you can add multiple of these conditions. So hopefully you get an idea. So that's what these are, nothing but our scaling policies. So we are just defining the rules, and we are integrating with the CloudWatch. So based on the CloudWatch metrics and alarms, we are scaling our environment up and down accordingly. Once everything looks good, just simply go ahead and click on configure notification. So auto scaling, configure your auto scaling group to send notification to a specified endpoint, such as an email address. That includes successful launch of an instance, failed. So if you're an administrator or a NOC or something, you can simply send a notification. You can enter an email address, or these are the different conditions. In my case, I'm not just going to use up this one, but these are pretty good to use. Simply go ahead and configure a tag. I'm going to give a tag to my web server. And then just simply click the review. These are some of the different details, and just simply go ahead and click create auto scaling group. And it will take a while, so you can have a look and successfully create your auto scaling group. So you can go ahead and click on close here. Let's go back to the launch configuration. So you can see that here is our launch configuration. These are some of the properties that we specified. You can copy this launch configuration and use it later. Under actions, there are different things you can create. You can copy again, you can create more. Go back to the auto scaling groups. You can see your auto scaling group here. These are some of the details. 1, maximum 5. Health check is ELD, default cooldown 300 seconds, and these are the different matrices. So it says now launching instance, launching the instance. This is a user request create an auto scaling group because we said there's a one minimum instance, so automatically it went and started creating an instance for us. These are the different scaling policies that we just created. Under instance, you can see it just started to launch one instance, it's saying in service. Notification, like again, as I mentioned earlier, you can create a notification tag, and these are the action if you want to take. So now let's go back and see on the instance, you can see it has started launch an instance, 8.0. So go back to your instances. And you can see that my first instance is up and running, and let's verify that do we have a web server installed up and running on this public IP. So it's just taking a while. Let me go ahead and do an SSH instance just to make sure everything is good. That I can do an SSH. I'll share my other screen. So as you guys can see, I started connected. This is my web 171.31.29.99. So I'm on this server, and let's re-verify the status of our FT web server. Saving time. Let me just change myself for root, and let's make sure it's not running. We'll go ahead and I'll go ahead and install the Apache manually. Just click it a little bit. Once that is done, just simply go ahead and start your Apache server. And let's go back and make sure that we can access our. Okay, now just to identify the server, I'm just going to say our first web server that we launched, so you know what I'm talking later when we do some of the things in this lab. So this is our first web server. Give it a few seconds, guys. Now it's still running some checks here, but if you go back to the monitoring tab here, and you can look at the CPU utilization, that's one of the metrics that we are using. And for the last 1 minute, the CPU utilization, it shows around the value of 12.95. And if you go back to our launch configuration, so this is meeting the requirement, and for a scaling group, it says minimum. So we had desired a one instance. Now let's look back at the scaling policy. So we said, okay, when the CPU utilization is less than 19, it's just going to remove these two instances. Add two instances when less than equal to 20 and between 39. So let's give it a few minutes. I just want to make sure that this instance is fully up. Okay, and okay, this is fully up. Go back to your load balancer. And I'll look at the load balancer. Now it has says one instance is server. So you can go back to your instances. And instead of going directly like here, you can always use your ELB's DNS record. So I'm going to go to one. So this is our first web server, basically. Same thing. Now let's go back and look here. Give a few minutes. Okay, while waiting for something, let me just show you some The notification, as I said earlier, you can go back, and you can create a notification from here. But you can do the same notification if you go under services. There is something here, SNS something, so you can go to the SNS here. Click on it's a simple notification. So again, just simply click on get started. Once you on get started, you will go ahead and create a topic here. So click on create topic. Give it a name, maybe lab AS topic or display name. If you want to give a display name, so I'll go ahead and use this as my display name. I created a topic here. Once the topic is done, we need to click on create a subscription here. So click on create a subscription. Now it's looking for an ARN. There's the ARN and the email type. You can type an email address. So let me go ahead and click create subscription here. Now if you see, it's asking for you to the ARN. So we need to get that ARN from your group, and then we'll go ahead and supply that one over here. And we can make use of your SNS from here too. So let me go back to our EC2 here. And let's go back and look at the load balancer. So I'm just giving it a few minutes, making sure the instance is fully up and running, and before we start launching anything. So let's back to the monitoring and have a look just to make sure. So if you see, the CPU utilization initially was at 12.95%. It's almost closer to 0 here. Okay, and it looks like everything should be stable now. It's been a while. Okay, now let's go back to the monitoring, just making sure everything looks good. So in our case, our action, it's going to add 2 more instances when the CPU utilization is above 20%. Now let's go ahead and see how we can increase the load on our CPU. So let's go back to this particular instance. And I can use just simply the dd command, or we can use, guys, the dd command simply, or okay, so I'll just use the old days basic command. So to increase the CPU, we can just simply run ddif/dev 0, and the output, we can send this output to /dev node. So let it run. And let's go back to the instance, and let's click on monitoring again and give it a few seconds. And you will see the CPU utilization will start to increase slowly. Okay, let me do one more here. I'm doing another session to this particular host. So we tab here. Let me just confirm that I'm on the right ideas, just to be sure. 43, 56. I'm using the wrong IP, guys. So give me a second here. And there. Okay, I'm on this host, and let me. So we have one DD is running. So I'm going to just go ahead and run another scenario. Let me start this pretty quick. Okay, give it a few more minutes, and you will get some more load on this host. Let's go back to the monitoring, and as you can see, the CPU utilization has gone 99%, so it needs to stay that for at least 5 minutes. Okay, and as you can see now, the CPU utilization is pretty high on this host, which is like again 27%. Now just click close, give it a few minutes, and it needs to stay dark for, and it will take a while before we really see our instant started to show up. So just give it a few more minutes, guys. And if you see this slowly, the seat utilization is for a 5 minute period is simply about 52.34. Just close here. And here we go. It just started to spin up two instances. We call that's what we say when there's. If you go back to our scaling groups here quickly, and the scaling policy, as we said, if the seat utilization is doing 20, so we'll go ahead and add two more instances. And if it's above 40, add one more instance. So let's go back to your instance. And as you can see that we have two more instances up and running here pretty much. So we'll give them a few more minutes. If you just want to make sure that go back to your load balance, make sure it has how many instances. So we are still waiting for those instances to be fully up before they can be added to the load balancer. So you can see based on our tag name that indeed these are the another two web server, and right now we are initializing them. So give us a few more minutes. And now let's click on one of the instances. If you see the availability zone is again 1D, that's what we selected. And they got a public IP error. That's how we configure. If you don't want a public IP addresses for your web servers, you can you don't have to select that, way you can just make use of your Elastic Load Balancer. So let's go back and give it a few more minutes. And now just to confirm how things are looking, do we have a web server running on the right now? But hopefully you get the idea. That is how it's scaling the application. So, and you look here that now it has started to spin up one more. So we had one earlier that was running up and running fine. That was our existing one. It then launched two more because the CPU utilization for 5 minutes we set between to 39 based on that, and if it's about 39, go ahead and launch one more. So that's why there's another one more. So we have a total of 4 instances here. The first two came up based on the condition of 20%. The other one came up from the condition of about 39%. So based on the load, you can go ahead and configure your policies. So give it a few more minutes, it will be up and running, guys. Okay, guys, so as you just saw that now we have multiple instances, one, two, three, four, five. That's what we wanted. And it's shutting down some of the things. So now let's go back to our first instance, which is this one. Let's look at the month. You can see that the CPU utilization is pretty much saturated to 100%. So now let's simply go ahead and take off the load from the server. So just taking off the load. I'm just stopping all of my scripts here. Give it a few minutes. So the CPU utilization should go down. And you can see that you will see the auto scaling policy and the auto scaling launch configurations. I will start shutting down some of the instances. So give it a few minutes and that will change. Okay, and as you can see, it has shut down the instance because the load has started to go down. So give it a couple more minutes. Okay, guys, so you can see we started to shut down some of those instances because that was how we had configured the policies. Yeah, one thing I want to show you to go back to the load balancer. And if you look under instances, we have our instances and some of the out of service instances. So that means the configuration, the auto launch configuration or the scaling group automatically takes care of adding these instances within your Elastic Load Balancer. That way you don't have to manually add them or do any configuration over here. So if you go back and under actions, you can delete this one. You can go ahead and make certain changes on the auto scaling group. Again, you can go ahead and add it and make some of the changes with the scaling policies. There are some scheduled actions, so you can create a create scheduled action. So if you go ahead and click a create scheduled action, you can give it a name, minimum and maximum capacity. You can have a desired capacity. You can have a recurrent start time. So that way you can have that many number of instances at that particular time or something. You can make these up. That's pretty much. And under the actions, these are your different instances. Some of their details, activity history. It shows some of your existing history, what was happening, when the instance was launched, when the instance was terminated, and some of the other details. Okay, guys, that's all pretty much within this lab. So you can see the auto scaling is taking care of increasing and decreasing. Again, if you want to make a change, you can go ahead and make the changes over here. Configuration, you can create a new launch configuration, and hopefully you get the idea. I'll talk about some of the other things into the next lab, but that's all pretty much on the auto scaling part. So you can easily auto scale your environment up and down based on the your CloudWatch policies. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in another lab another sometime. Thanks. Take care. Bye.